smile and they never will. Only vultures can fulfill empty promises. Is what they get. No running water from year to year. Hearts that no one desire. That if there is a Messiah, someday there's a whisper to prayer. Come on, always parents, can't see 10 people in a one-bedroom shanty. Boss to sell on the pavement, no vacancy, no employment. Get on firecracker from gunshot. Let us know when things get hot. Afraid to look out the window, so your voice is strong. I hear you sing the chorus. Yeah, yeah. Oh, oh. Voices from the ghetto. Crying, crying, they're crying, yeah. Voices from the ghetto. Mothers just hold the head and ball. And them woman stronger than a wall. A big pusher iron your daughter. Son in jail for manslaughter. Too bad for you, hear them bad boys, no bail. That's the black man's choice. Like Shago say, poverty is hell. Your little girl child belly start to swell. Some say life is a cycle, but don't draw she no circle. Now will it all end, only time could tell. Outside the siren keep howling, inside your belly will bowling. Oh, this way very often, since you melting a coffee. One night, in bed you're sleeping, next night is a wave that you're keeping. So you pray to win the lotto, not to hear them voice. What they doing? I hear you. They're still crying. Yeah. Crying. Yeah, crying. 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 Yeah. Tented pride they sold their on. Revolution made collections born. And often their tragic story brings a journalist's glory. No wonder they view the world with scorn. Since the day they born, some call them rebels without a cause. These social victims of unjust laws. Yet they christen the heroes, renegades, desperados, forever knocking on heaven's door. Hear me? Steel and music shatters the silence. I'm on it to conquer the violence. Big men run when cops approach, fighting for scraps with the cockroach. Young thugs, they're tough protected. Almost every young girl expecting. Go tomorrow, let's see tomorrow. Then the another child will be to crying. 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 Yeah, crying. Crying. Yeah. Give me the hope. Amenities, Lord heaven knows. Opportunities, well, them always close. Can't get work white collar. If I can't stretch me dollar, later for me crap or smoke me pipe. Some just out of death from gripe. Life does rape, dignity and pride. Till there's only bitterness left inside. And every day is a hustle. Arguments are settled with muscle. Till you're 6 feet deep by 3 feet wide. Watch. Children, should life keep on drifting? Something they're smoking or sniffing. Maybe they're trying to forget this life of misery and regret. No one to come to the rescue except Capleton and Bushu. So they boom boxes the Lego. The drum out voices in, that's what they're crying. They're still crying. They're crying and they're crying. Crying and they're crying, yeah, yeah.
Voices from the ghetto.
Crying.
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 Yeah. Voices from the ghetto. Now will it all end on I could tell. Outside the siren keep howling. Inside your belly will growling. Can't get walk once in white collar. If I can't stretch me dollar, later from me crap or smoke me pipe. Some just out of death from gripe. Life does rape, dignity and pride. Till there's only bitterness left inside. And every day is a hustle. Arguments are settled with muscle. Till you're 6 feet deep by 3 feet wide. Watch. Children, should life keep on drifting? Something they're smoking or sniffing. Maybe they're trying to forget this life of misery and regret. No one to come to the rescue except Capleton and Bushu. So they boom boxes the Lego. The drum out voices in, that's what they're crying. They're still crying. They're crying and they're crying. Crying and they're crying, yeah, yeah.
Voices from the ghetto.
Crying.
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 Yeah. Voices from the ghetto.
Till I die, to be the liar. You want to help to mind your family. You want to help your man financially. But nowadays it's really very hard to get a job as a girl in Trinidad. You're looking now to find something to do. You meet a boss man who promised to help you. But when the man lay down the condition, it's nothing else but humiliation. They want to see your whole anatomy. They want to see where your doctor never see. They want to do what your husband never do. Still you will know if that scamp will hire you. Well, it is all this humiliation to get a job these days as a woman. Brother, they could keep
Their money, my honey, and die with my dignity.
not at all. People, but oh, oh, yeah, yeah. Badam, bibam, didum, bidaya, babadam. Some of them done pack up already, yet they sit down, waiting like Mapipi, using the power of the cash and position, waiting to abuse and exploit every woman. To get the work you have to go to bed with him, become the slave, the second wife and deputy. And as the next woman come on the line, he start to tell you you ain't good, you can't whine. They want to see you in some fancy pose. Want to see how you look without your clothes. They want you cock up like a bloody acrobat. The wife at home, they can't ask she to do that. So before I had to lick down somebody, or cause the police come for me, tell them they could keep their money, I could keep my money and tie with my dignity. I'm born with it. Looking for work, you might bounce up a fellow who might be looking quite handsome and macho. You tell yourself you want to work with him, so you decide you go try a ratchy fee. But when you're done, it's then you get to know he wife leave him and gone long time ago. With all the cash he have, he's a failure. The man ain't nothing but a blinking sukuya. He want to feel up your navel and your breast. He want to see if you are water on your chest. The things he want to do you with his hand, like if he's searching to find the promised land. I am a woman, I don't make any skylark. Before I slap you and you die of heart attack. Glasses, keep your money.
Keep my honey and die with my dignity.
It have a lot of women just like me who might be not well off financially. You need a job and you really need it bad. A manly side to help you must feel glad. But if you value yourself as a woman, you will demand respect from the vagabond. Stand up to them, let them know the truth. It's what you want to end up blinking prostitute. You have a mole on your back, they want to see. They want to see if you have marks on your belly. They want to know how much man you had before, and if you're strong enough to take any more. I have my pride and I have my ambition. I want to hold my head up high as a woman. So tell them they could keep their money, I will keep my money.
Honey and die with my dignity.
Singing Sandra, die with my dignity. Die with my dignity. A plea there against sexual exploitation in the workplace. And before that, Voices from the Ghetto, two classics of the genre. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. Voices from the Ghetto, singing Sandra. Sandra Devines. Good evening to everyone and welcome to our midweek edition of Politics 101. It's a Wednesday night. I'd like to welcome all of you if you're joining us from in Guyana or you're joining us from outside of Guyana. Wherever you are, a special good evening, a special good night, a special good afternoon in some parts of the United States. I know in Arizona it's still 4 o'clock, so it's still afternoon. Good evening to all of you and welcome. Good night, good afternoon. Welcome to Politics 101. We are continuing to do what we have been doing for the last, 5 years and counting. This program, like every other program, mushroomed in the wake of the 2020 election. We came on stream in March of 2021. So it's been 5 years and more. And without you, we would not have continued to be on. All the other programs after me tonight at 8 o'clock, you have Shara Duncan with In the Ring, and then Mark Benchop later on, Straight Up in the morning, Kedaki, Amsterdam. And during the day, we have Speaking Out with Paul Slow, and, the late Clinton Conway was his co-host. So Paul is there, going to be there by himself. Maybe he will find another co-host. And then we have lots of other programs once a week. I know MP Nima Flubes has our program, I think, on Saturday. Coretta McDonald has our program on Wednesdays. Dexter Todd has his program on Tuesdays. Some of these programs clash, but you can listen to some, watch at some of them live, and others you can watch them later. But quite a lot of these shows, and that's on our side of the political aisle. There are others on the other side of the political aisle. I know Globe Span 24/7, Freddie Kissoon has a show. So this is where the action seems to be here on social media. The world has evolved, and so we have to take cognizance of that. We can't always swim against the tide. Change is inevitable, but we have to be very careful that even as things are changing, they're remaining the same. As David Rudder said, the more things change, the more they remain the same. A little bit of dialectics there, the equal of opposites, as they say. Good evening and welcome. Good night to you out there in Europe. Good afternoon to those of you who are somewhere on the west coast of the United States of America. It's always good to have people from various parts of the world on. Yesterday morning, Aubrey Norton was on Kedaki's Guyanese Morning Time, and his remarks on that program seems to have set off a lot of debate, understandably so. I think he indicated that he would remain, he would run as PNC leader. He would run for the PNC leadership at the next Congress, but that he would not be the presidential candidate at the next election. And there seemed to have been lots of commentary on his remarks there. I will refrain because it's a fraternal party, and I don't feel comfortable talking about the internal politics of the PNC. But just to say that I find a lot of dishonesty from some people. They've really strung that brother. They've really been so vicious to that brother. I don't think, and I'm quoting the late George Odlum of St. Lucia, I don't think there's been any other politician that has been sinned against in recent times like Aubrey Norton. It's really amazing. And I'm not talking here about PPP. One expects the PPP to attack him. I'm talking about people, from his own party, his own political family, his own support base. It's amazing how vicious people can be. But that's all I'll say on that for now. Politics is what it is. Please share the live, please share the link. Our business is not to get rid of Aubrey Norton or anyone who is fighting on our side. Our business is to get rid of one-party rule in Guyana, and that means getting rid of the PPP as the single rulers in our country. That's our business. Self-criticism is a good thing, is a necessary thing, and we must engage in self-criticism. In that regard, criticism of Aubrey Norton is in order. But destruction of institutions, using the individual as the means, it could be deadly. We shall see. We shall see. Last night, we of course talked about planning for the future. And the future in Guyana is one that we must not take lightly. We must not take lightly. Whenever the kind of money that we have comes to Guyana, comes to a country, and a country like Guyana, it is going to cause a lot of shifting in the country. And you want, when the shifting is over, the country should not be worse off, but should be better off. If what we've seen in the first decade of oil is anything to go by, there's no guarantee that our country would be better off when the era of the oil boom passes. And ultimately, we have to think ahead. We have to think about next year, the next 5 years, but we also have to think about the next 20 years, the next 30 years, the next 40 years. What kind of country are we going to be? What kind of country are we going to be? And we have to think big. We have to think differently. We have to draw on our history to inform our present and to chart a future. We have to think politically overt. We have to think economically overt, but we also have to be somewhat covert. We have to think within the context of Guyana as a country on its own, but we also have to think about Guyana as a country that is part of something larger than itself. We have to think about Guyana as a whole, but we also have to think about Guyana in its various parts. Because Guyana, like other countries, we are the sum total of parts. Whether those parts are geographical parts or ethnic parts, we're a country of parts, and we think about the country as a whole, but we also think about the country as parts. And I have expressed my own fear about what our country could look like in 30 years, in 40 years, in 20 years, if we continue down the trajectory that we're going. Clearly, our country is destroyed, but not our country, but those who have been in government in the last 30, 40 years have destroyed institutions and practices. Elections, as I said last night, are no longer contestation with the end of becoming a good country. We've destroyed elections in Guyana. A vote can now be bought. Votes can now be bought. That is going to be the norm going forward. I don't know how we're going to stop that drift. If people think that they can sell their votes for money in a situation of impoverishment, in a situation of alienation, people are more likely than not to sell their votes. How do you reverse that? Even if you were to get rid of poverty, it will take a little bit of time to get people out of the habit of selling votes. Once you sell your votes, the elections no longer are democratic. And so one of the pillars of democracy, meaning elections, is destroyed in Guyana. The level of vote buying and vote selling that occurred at the 2025 election will stun us when the history of those elections are written. Of course, you can never, in a definitive way, say, well, vote buying is the only, vote selling is the only way, vote buying is the only way you can analyze what happened at an election. Because there are other factors that would have gone into play. So to say that an election was determined solely by vote buying would not be altogether accurate. But suffice to say that vote buying was a new phenomenon in the 2025 election, and it would have affected the outcome of those elections. And as I said, once you get down that road, it's very difficult to reverse it. It's very difficult to reverse it. So we have to contend with that. We have to contend with that. And if vote buying is normative, then the conditions in which votes are being bought and sold, those conditions themselves will become normative. And so we are talking about vote buying within the context of poverty and within the context of inequitable distribution of resources. So I am arguing that if a party benefits from vote buying, then it has an interest in keeping the conditions in which it becomes easier to buy votes. And I am arguing that the level of poverty, the IDB puts it at 58%. It could be higher than 58%. It could be a little bit lower, but it's definitely more than half of the population lives in poverty. That's not penny poverty. That's a lot of poverty. It means that you're in a community and you wake up in the morning and you look to your left and you see poverty. You look to your right, you see poverty. You look in front of you, you see poverty. Because those who are not impoverished are not going to live in those impoverished communities. And so the standard by which people are going to measure their life is through the poverty that they see around them every day. And so the poverty multiplies, but more than that, the poverty ignites a certain kind of social and political behavior. You're impoverished, not just as an individual, but as a community. And you're alienated from the larger political system. You're alienated from the government. Because you feel that in spite of what the government does and the state does, your situation remains the same. And so you're alienated. Your connection to country is dumbed down. And you take a certain kind of attitude. And so when people are alienated from the political process, we must not be surprised. They sell their votes. The highest bidder gets their votes. The vote is no longer sacred. The vote is no longer a means by which you get out of poverty. And so we are developing this new attitude to politics, this new attitude to the state, this new attitude to the society around us. And that then affects the quality of governance, and it affects the quality of democracy. It is very, very difficult in Guyana today to take very seriously those who govern. Now, we are opposition. And so therefore part of our function is to critique the government. That is normal. It doesn't mean that everyone in the government is bad. It doesn't mean that everyone in the government is corrupt. It doesn't mean that everyone in the government deserves to be talked about in a certain kind of way. But as a collective, the government has to face these charges of corruption and bad governance. And so therefore, we have to come to an understanding of the danger that the government represents. The danger that the government represents. And that danger is compounded by the kind of money that the government has access to and the way in which the government is prepared to use that money. The way in which the government is prepared to use that money. It uses the money partly to cement a new class of mega rich people. The thing is that we have always had the mega rich. In every society they're there. The danger about the mega rich that is developing in Guyana right now is the mega rich belongs largely to one ethnic group. And that's the great danger. It's like all house upon all house. You already have the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. But the rich of one ethnic group is getting richer than even the rich of other ethnic groups. When you look at the Portuguese and the East Indian rich, even if there is a small section of rich Africans and rich Amerindians, they lag far behind the others. So the danger of this accumulation that we're seeing happening here is that it is not sustainable except by force. Except by force. And even with the force of the state, ultimately, it is not sustainable. Yet, it could reach a point where it has become so normative and so fixed that it becomes, although it's not sustainable, it becomes difficult to dislodge. It becomes difficult to dislodge. And one of the trends that we have to fight against is that there's this hierarchy, and that some groups accept their place in the hierarchy. So that there is a tendency in the African community, I don't know how widespread it is, but it's there. They said, look, The PPP will be in power forever and forevermore. We are never going to get in power, meaning our African parties are never going to get in power. So let us look after ourselves as individuals. As I said, I don't know how widespread it is, but I know it's there in the African Guyanese community. And in the process of looking after yourself as individuals, you take what you get, you accept the lowly place on the ladder. Some of you would have heard about Booker T. Washington. And Booker T. Washington, at the turn of the 20th century in the United States, argued precisely that. He said to Black people, don't bother go and get no university education. Don't bother fight for civil rights. Just accept your place. Go learn a trade and accept your place as second-class citizen and accumulate whatever you can accumulate from there. Generally, that was his argument. W.B. Du Bois, who was his contemporary, argued, on the other hand, that look, invest in education. And he came up with the notion of the talented 10. That, go get a university education and then come back into the community and lift the community. He also, Du Bois argued that do not accept your second-class citizenship. Fight for equality and equity. Fight for civil rights. And so in some regard, the Booker T. Washington thesis has crept into the Black community. And you may ask, how did it get there? It get there because some PPP people, especially those Blacks who have gone into the PPP, they preach that doctrine to the Black community. Well, there are opportunities under the PPP. You are better grab the opportunities. And then you ask, what are the opportunities? You get a $2 million to build a little concrete strip. That's the opportunity. And so they preach that thing. That I don't even think that some of them have read or studied Booker T. Washington. But the Booker T. Washington thesis has survived the years. And so it's there. These, mostly the Blacks from the PPP, who, preach to the Black people, come and accept what the opportunities, and you have to, and people don't ask, well, what are the opportunities available to me, and how do those opportunities compare to the ones that are available to others? And so we have this tendency, as I said, I don't know how widespread it is in the African community of accepting the little and accepting your place at the bottom of the social and economic hierarchy. Those things we have to fight against. We have to fight against, because we cannot leave them like that. Because if we leave them like that and say, well, it's only a small section of the African community, it's not a large section, and so we leave it. No, those things could grow. I have my ear out whenever I go out and I listen to people. And there is that conflict, especially among the young Africans, because they know there's a lot of money circulating. And they live in an era where money matters, and they know that. And so there is a conflict. On the one hand, they're aware of discrimination against them as black people, but on the other hand, they look around and they see their Indo-Guyanese counterparts doing better. The challenge for us as leaders on our side is how to navigate all these contradictions, as the old Marxists would call them. How do we navigate all these complexities? I usually say, if you listen to a young African for 1 hour, for 45 minutes, you're not going to necessarily like what he or she will tell you. They're going to talk about, I gotta, why is in this for me? I got live, I'm gonna eat the bread, etc. Once you get past the 45 minutes, then you start hearing the reality by black people and get no future in this country. So you're hearing, in a sense, two messages: a frustrated message that, look, the system is not looking after me, I gotta look after myself as individual. But you also hear the collective instinct, the collective observation that people of my group, people of our group, are being discriminated against. W.B. Du Bois talked about the double consciousness among Africans. It could be extended to Africans in other parts of the diaspora and even Africa itself. The African consciousness, and then the other consciousness. Sometimes you're black people. I'm no African. I'm Guyanese. A couple. So you don't have to deal with having to. You don't have to deal with the reality of being black. And so you hear that. And then the police shoots down some young man in the community. And the same person is going to say, they're killing black people, children. So you have those two consciousness. The African consciousness and the non-African or anti-African consciousness. And Du Bois said those two consciousness sometimes are at war with each other. And we are seeing that in sections of the African community. This double consciousness, this two-ness. The problem is that I don't think as a political leadership, we are confronting the reality of what's happening in the African community. That is why we were so surprised when a section of that community voted for the new party win. It took all of us by surprise. Because we some more than others, but because we didn't understand what was happening in the community, we were dealing with political correctness and not dealing with the reality of what was happening in the community. I think this is where the PPP, is better in dealing with their constituency. Because the PPP does the political correct rhetoric, and that is for us. But in the community, they deal with the realities of their constituency. They know when to ease, they know when to press. They know the messaging. They don't deal with their constituency as some non-identified group of people. They're better at it than the black middle class leadership. And so things happen within the black community that we are not aware of. we are not aware of. I'm always, like I said, amazed. You know, you're going to keep a meeting in Buxton, 99.99% of the people there in Buxton, and you'll hear our leadership will say, well, you have to have an Indian, and so on. And I'm not saying that an Indian should not speak in Buxton, but you're going there in Buxton to speak to an African Guyanese community. And if an Indian is going to be on the platform, it has to be an Indian who will speak to the realities of the African Guyanese community. If you look at the PPP, and I'm not saying that we should take example from them, all those who are jumping from the PNC and going over to the PPP is not going to carry them deep down in Port Moran to talk to anybody. You going deep down in Port Moran, you Zulfi and them by going in there, and Barrett and them, they ain't taking them chap that's gone cross. You may have a big rally and you'll give them a little 2 minutes, 3 minutes on a big plat rally in somewhere. But when you're going into the community, the belly of the community, you are taking them. And I'm saying on our side, if you're going into Port Moran, don't carry me. Don't carry me. First of all, people in Port Moran don't want to hear from me. That's the first thing. Second, I won't be able to bring a vote for you from Port Moran to Renmore. And the reality, on another day, if we were to have elections and the PPP loses and APNU gets into power, the people of Port Moran will want to hear from David Hines. But now they don't want to hear from me. So carrying me there is useless. I hear at least one or two of the blacks in the who left and went to the PPP make this argument that the PNC don't even try to make a plea to Indians. First of all, it's untrue. The PNC does try to, in my estimation, they try too much because they don't get the results from it. So that's the first thing that's wrong. But the second thing, why are you going to spend your capital trying to get returns that are going to be negligible? Well, now the PNC and all of us on the opposition side realize that we don't even have our own constituency together. Spend capital among our constituency. We spend capital. We didn't employ the capital in the right way because we didn't have a clue what was happening among our own people. Because I would think that the energies that we spent trying to get crossover votes, we didn't realize that in our own community, people were crossing away from us. While we are going after 1,000 Indians, we found out that 70-something thousand Africans ran away from us. And they trick us. You know, these Indian commentators, they trick us. If you want to win, you got to get crossover votes. All right. You may go after the crossover votes. You may get 3,000 crossover votes. We now learn that we may get 3,000 crossover votes, but we're losing 75,000 of our own votes. And the 2025 election, we didn't get no 1,000 crossover from Indians. and 75,000 of our people gone. We have to do politics differently. And you, the viewers, you, the members of the constituency, you all have to put sense in our head. You have to put sense in our heads. You all have to speak very frankly to us as leaders. You all have to speak very frankly to us when we are doing foolishness. You all have to be able to tell us we are doing foolishness. So we have to map a strategy for getting power in Guyana. Either my preference is to get our share of power. I'm a power sharer. I get 49% of the vote, I get 49% of the cabinet. That's my philosophy. Some people believe the winner-take-all system still matters. God bless them. Whether it's by winner-take-all or by power sharing, we cannot survive in this country without power. Bottom line, we have to get power. We have to get political power. We are not going to get economic power using the models that are being used by the PPP. So to get economic power, we have to get political power. While we are waiting on that political power, however, we have to lick down the PPP to expand the economic wealth that are coming to this country, expand them to African people and Amerindian people. To get political power sharing, we have to change the constitution. The PPP is not going to come to the table tomorrow and say, let's change this constitution to make it possible for the opposition to share power with them. They're not going to do that. They're not. To get constitutional change, to ensure that power is democratized in Guyana, we have to force the PPP. In 1997, they didn't take up guns and go in the hills. In 1997, 98, Desmond Hoyt put people on the streets. He brought the country to a standstill. He made the country ungovernable. Didn't pick up arms. The arms were the people on the streets. Brought the PPP to the table. The usual thing, they came to the table, and as soon as they sit down, they try to renege. And Hoyt put back people on the streets. And they had to sign a second accord, the St. Lucia Accord. Hoyt's mistake was that he still believed in the winner-take-all system. And he thought that with constitution and so on and so forth, that the conditions would be there to win an election. He was wrong. He could have gotten a power-sharing government. The PPP was prepared to agree to a power-sharing government. Hoyt didn't go far enough. I think Norton and the other youngsters at that time who were pushing for power-sharing wanted to go further and demand the power-sharing government. Hoyt didn't want to go far further. It was in 2002 at the Congress in August, just before he died, that he came to the conclusion when he said power sharing is an idea whose time has come. Power sharing is an idea whose time has come. Had he come to that conclusion 5 years before, in 1997, we could have had a power sharing government. I think our people have become a little bit cynical, and they think that when you talk about power sharing government, you bring in the PPP into your government. No. First of all of us live in this country. Africans don't want to be governed by Indians. Indians don't want to be governed by Africans. That was true 60 years ago at independence, and it's true today. They may play games with each other, but they don't want to be governed by each other. And so the principle behind shared governance or power sharing or consociational government, as they call it in academia, the principle is you're not bringing anybody into your government. The principle is that we don't want to be governed by each other. And so we sit down in the same government and we govern the country together. That is the principle. And wherever that has been tried around the world, it has brought some success to the society. We just have to look at Suriname. They have the same kind of ethnic makeup like ours, like our country. But they have a power sharing system. It's not perfect. But you don't hear Suriname with the kind of hyper ethnicity that we have here. To become president of Suriname, you don't do so with 50% of the vote. You have to get 2/3. Here you can become president with less than 50% of the vote. And so Africans are on the outside. We are not participating in government. We are not participating in decisions. Others are making decisions for us. And we are sitting waiting for the next election with the hope that we're going to go in and we're going to make decisions for the other side. It's not a sane approach. It's better to get 50% of power than to get 0%. I understand the cynicism among some of our supporters, but we have to get to that point and recognize that this country doesn't belong to Black people alone. It doesn't belong to Indian people. We know it doesn't belong to Indian people alone. We know that. We don't have to teach our supporters that. But our supporters have also learned that this country don't belong to Black people alone. It don't belong to Indian alone, and if that is correct, it can't belong to Black people alone. And if we decide that we're going to stay together in this country, we have to govern this country together. We don't have to hug one another up. If I'm in a government with Jack D, you don't become a friend. He's still my adversary. But rather than he get 100% of the power, I get 0%, and we are cussing each other, he with 100%, I with 0%. When we sit down in the power sharing government, we're going to still be cussing each other, but he with 50% and I with 50%. And he can't do nothing without me, and I can't do nothing without you. Black people, we have to recognize that we are at a point in this country that if we don't make some drastic changes in the way we think and the way we do politics, we are going to lose corn and husk. We already lose the corn. We already lose corn. We barely get the husk. And if we don't think differently, we're going to lose corn and husk. If tomorrow Black leaders get serious and Black people get serious, the PPP comes to the table and we will negotiate a political settlement. You don't got to pick up guns. That was a time in the 70s and so on, the age of revolution. You don't got to pick up guns. In fact, the fear would be the PPP trying to use the guns against us, and that's why we got to tell our brothers and sisters in uniform, don't shoot me. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot nobody. The last time when Brother Ogunse said that, the interpreter said that he was telling the army and the police to turn their guns on Indian people. That's not what he was saying. That's why the case was thrown out. The police and army that are predominantly Black must turn their guns on nobody. They must not turn their guns on anybody. The PPP would love them to turn their guns on Black people. I wouldn't want them to turn their guns on Indians. I do not want the Black police to turn their guns on Indians, but I also don't want you to turn your guns on Black people or Amerindian people. We have to have a political solution in this country. We cannot continue this thing of going to these fake elections every 5 years, where the elections are decided before they start. The rigging takes long before we start. And now where you can buy votes, you can use the state resources to buy votes. You don't have to buy 200,000 votes. All it takes is 33 out of 65 to win the government. And you buy enough African votes to get 3 seats, you're in business. That's why I'm saying they're fake elections. No biometrics. No clean voters list. Vote buy-in. That's the recipe right there for rigged election before it starts. And the white people know that, and they say that, but they say it after the election done. I'm not saying it's in their interest to say it before the election start. Their interest is not our interest. Their interest is stability so that they can make money. We interest is stability so that we can get our fair share of the resources here. So I'm making that plea from this platform. What I say here is not going to be reported in the newspaper tomorrow or in the news. We live in a strange country. What I say here is going to be heard by the very news people, and it's going to be heard by the political leaders, and it's going to be heard by those among our constituency. But it's our people in our constituency who have an incentive for a change in the system. I don't want this thing to explode and black people have to get dread and black people have to break up the country before they get their fair share. I don't want that. I do not want that. So we've got to think differently. We've got to stop thinking small. We got to think big. And so constitutional change to ensure that whether the elections are rigged or whether they're free and fair, we want all of us to have a share in cabinet where the power lies. And if there is power sharing, there'll be less of an incentive to rig. Because you know that at the end of the process, you are going to be in government. There's no joy in being opposition leader, because that's what you are, opposition leader. You can't change nothing, you can't influence nothing. As opposition leader, you have to do what Azudin doing. Go and stand up in front of the big house and say, this is what corruption under the PPP looks like. If you're in cabinet, you don't have to go and stand in the house. You have the power to stop the corruption. You know, Azudin goes and he stand up in the house, in front of the house, and he said, this is what corruption and people do. He just making me feel good. He ain't shifting no Indian person. Because Indian people, I said, yeah, it may be corruption. It may be corruption, but at least we getting some sass. So the PPP is not losing any votes by Azudin saying this is what corruption look like, and he point out so and so and so and so. He's just making black people feel nice. Yeah, look how the man exposing the corruption. These people corrupt bad by. Well, how are you going to stop the corruption if you don't have power? So what I am talking here tonight is how we going to get power. I think you all know the corruption. Yes, when Azudin stand up in front of the house and he reveal what we are learning is the extent of the corruption, not the corruption. We know that there's corruption. And what he's doing is making us learn the extent of the corruption. The question for Azudin, the question for me, the question for all of us is what you are doing about it. Can't they stop him? I've heard some black people, some of them seasoned political activists, when they hear what we name Azudin expose the big house and big car that the Reverend family got. At least the Reverend look after the family. That is the level of cynicism that the PPP has dragged us. That black people are saying, at least Reverend as a black man, look after the family. And that's the drift that is going on among our supporters that we have to stop. We have to stop. We have to have power, whether it's shared power or at worst, at best, it should be shared power. At worst, it should be power by ourselves. I am not interested in power by ourselves because we're doing the same thing. We're going to get power like we did in 2015. The PPP is going to lick the hell out of us when they're in opposition, because when they're in opposition, they're soft. As we saw between 2015 and 2020, they went to the point of buying one of our MPs. We had power, and we had power, political power. We had control of the state, and we didn't think about buying to a PPP people. PPP without power thought about buying, and they did buy. One of ours is the approach to politics. So if we win power tomorrow, the PPP is not going to make it easy for us. They're going to try to buy us, one or two of us again. It's in their thinking. And we're going to be going wrong and wrong and wrong. At some point, we have to stop. Indian people vote for the PPP, they make their choice. Black people vote for whoever they vote for, they make their choice. Let me sit down and run this country together. And when we sit down there, there's going to be no budget with 51% for infrastructure to facilitate corruption and the empowerment of a moneyed bourgeoisie class of one race. That ain't going to happen in a power sharing government. It ain't going to happen. We are at a defining moment. We're always at a defining moment. But we have to want to define the moment. And if we don't have power, we can't define nothing. We have gotten too comfortable with people abusing one another. And the PPP need plenty abusing. And we hear about PPP corruption, and we need to know about those instances of corruption. But we can know about all the corruption. We can abuse till the cows come home. Unless we get power, we are not going to be able to influence anything. We are not. There comes a time when we have to say, enough is enough. And that time is now. We have to say, enough is enough. And we've got to begin to act. We've got to begin to act. I'm not going to ease up. We got to act now for now. We want mega contracts for black contractors. But black contractors got want it. If black contractors want to settle for 10 million and a 2 million, 3 million, that's not doing it. You all are being selfish in an obscene way. For them to be any kind of, I hear black people talk about empowerment. Don't talk about a word. Don't use a word, empowerment. Empowerment and black people don't go together in Guyana. For us to have any meaningful economic shift, we have to have contractors in our communities with mega contract, 100 million, 200 million, $500 million. Is 1.1 trillion. Half of it is infrastructure. If half of the half come to black people and Amerindian people, it will make a big difference. 90% of it and more is going to Indian and Amerindian contractors, not Amerindian, Portuguese, but mostly Indian contractors. If half of it goes to Indian and half go to black people and Amerindian people, it wouldn't be equitable to the nth, but it will make a big difference. But we got want it. We got want it. Black people got want it. When I hear the young people say, I'm looking for it, of course you're looking for it, but you're looking for small it. While you come to parts, you're on the other side looking for a big it. They're looking for a big HIT. You're looking for IT. You're looking for IT it. And they're looking for the big HIT. And they're getting it.